Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Swing State Update. I'm Tyler Bowyer, and this is
Austin Smith.
And we are excited to be with you on this wonderful Friday, starting off this weekend. You got any big weekend plans, Austin?
2 weddings this weekend, so
Wow.
I'm going to be pretty tired.
Wow, I'm so excited for you. Getting married twice. That's crazy. It's been a crazy week. I'm sure a lot of you that are out there, some of our top activists, our closest people, have been following all of the craziness happening across the country. We're excited to bring you kind of what's up and what's happening. And again, the key target states. And for those of you that are new listeners and first-time listeners, Swing State Update, our goal is to bring just like a nice bullhorn at least once a week. We're probably going to end up doing this a lot more than once a week. Just letting everybody know what's going on, what our field team is doing at Turning Point Action, what some of the closest organizations to us are doing out in the field, doing such great work to help bring the conservative movement together so we can run, build, and win in 2024. And so Swing State Updates focus predominantly on Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, the 3 critical states that are necessary to win. And again, just being that bullhorn, letting people know, but we're beyond that too. I mean, there's other states, right?
That's right.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, tons of things happening in Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Iowa, Florida, and Ohio. Those are really your 10 states that have the most going on. And we've just got a lot.
But it always seems that it's Arizona and Georgia have something going on. Like every day there's something new in Arizona and Georgia.
Well,
that's how crazy that is.
I mean, Arizona for a long time, I felt like when the whole thing happened with Gabby Giffords, that really kicked off, I guess that was like almost
2011-ish?
Like 13 years ago. That really kicked off when I think Arizona just started deserving its own news network. I felt like we needed our ANN, you know?
I mean, you could even argue before the SB 1070 back then.
Yeah.
And then,
well, that was the same era.
Yeah,
that was
right
the same
there.
era. Yeah, you had SB 1070, all the craziness, all the McCain stuff at the time. Trump, this was the battleground, the starting point for the Trump campaign. I mean, so much has happened in Arizona, and we're seeing the same thing happening now in Georgia. And I was kind of joking around with one of our insiders in Georgia, and I've said this to the state party chair in Georgia, who we'll talk about today, Josh McCain, is that Georgia's kind of going through what Arizona was not that many years ago. So we've got a lot of connection, lots going on. So let's, what do you say? We should
dive right into it. We got quite a bit to cover.
So we'll kick off right here. We'll start in Georgia since we're talking about Georgia. The news just came out yesterday about Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell, for those of you that don't know, do you guys know Sidney Powell? Austin, what do you know about Sidney Powell?
Sidney Powell is an attorney. She's still an attorney. After the November 2020 election, she was head on talking about fraud in specifically places like Georgia, Fulton County, Cobb County. And that's all I can remember about her other than that. I mean,
yeah, she was a U.S. attorney. Highly, she has a ton that she has been involved with from Texas for a long time. She represented executives in the Enron scandal. If you remember Enron, she defended Michael Flynn when the United States went after Michael Flynn, and she successfully defended him. And then she became kind of like the notoriety that came up with her was when she was defending Donald Trump and the 2020 election, when so many people started having concerns about the election systems and the way that things were being processed, because there's all these new things that were being thrown at the elections across the country. And so Sidney Powell was part of that, filing lawsuits, trying to, at least get an inside peek at, what some of these systems were doing, particularly in Georgia and Arizona, other places. I think Michigan, she was super involved, Wisconsin.
And I think she did file a lawsuit against Doug Ducey too, didn't she, in 2020?
Yeah.
I remember that. I do remember that now.
Some involvement and awareness with that. So, so she was named as one of the people that they
Indicted.
They had these criminal charges brought up against her in the RICO case in Georgia. So again, RICO, for those of us at home, I know we hear that all the time. It's racketeering, influencing a corrupt organization. That's what RICO stands for. And she got charged with election fraud and computer crimes and defrauding the state. So all these different things. So the news just came out yesterday. So this is fresh. This is within the last basically 24 hours that she accepted a plea bargain, a plea deal. That she pled guilty to a series of misdemeanors, and that is really kind of where it stands. So so she just accepted that. So a lot of grassroots people in Georgia right now are feeling all kinds of ways because they're not feeling great. They think that this is kind of a slap in the face.
Do they feel that she's sold out, or that they got her and she has to accept those pleas?
There's a little bit of both feeling, from what I understand, and this is from our team. So shout out to our Georgia team:
Cooper, Orion, Courtney, and Joseph.
Yeah, Cooper, Orion, Courtney, and Joseph have been all on the ground. And by the way, it was Courtney's birthday. So
it is. Happy birthday, Courtney.
So it was her birthday yesterday. But yeah, they had brought to us, they've been tracking, because our team in Georgia is everywhere. And so they're going around and they're actually hearing the state party chair, Josh McCain, who we're good friends with. Mm-hmm. We love Josh. He's doing a great job. He's a great young man who's leading the state party, I think, in the best way.
A great example of a state party chair.
Great dude. And he's been talking about this in real time. And so this note actually just went out from some of the state party leadership that talked a little bit about this, is that explaining that Sidney Powell was charged with 7 felony offenses. Her plea deal announced was a plea to 6 misdemeanor charges. So the misdemeanor charges, basically bring it down to the level of what some would consider a heavy traffic offense. Mm-hmm. So again, these are 6 misdemeanors. She's getting 6 years probation and paying, I think it's about $9,000 in restitution, and then writing a letter of apology as part of her plea deal. Some lawyers in Georgia have said, we've seen DUI defendants that receive significantly harsher sentences and arrangements than this. And so, a lot of people are asking, well, why is she accepting a plea offer here? Why is she accepting a plea deal? And, some of these, and again, not making excuses for this, but this is just, part of the conversation that some people are having is like, well, her whole life, she's an attorney, right? Yeah. So she's facing disbarment. She's facing, significant court, like legal costs.
Probably
here.
Bankruptcy.
Yeah. Like totally bankrupting her, just like with many of these other people. And they've kind of pointed to the fact that's like, hey, the fact that, Fannie Willis was willing to immediately just drop all these charges and, offer a plea for misdemeanors is really more of a situation of like this whole thing was crap on her side. And typically there was a screenshot that I had grabbed. Let me read this to you because I think this is really let me see here.
So what I'm taking from this while you look for that is the Fannie Willises, they've overplayed their hand a little bit. Yeah, the backlash here is so bad, but they can't go all the way back.
This is what somebody wrote today. But let's put this in context. As I pointed out through the Mueller investigation, when prosecutors cut plea deals with cooperators early in proceedings, they generally want pleading defendants to admit guilt to major charges in the indictment. That indicates to the public that the major conspiracy charge is real. It puts pressure on the other defendants to plead guilty to serious charges and cooperate, and it shores up the case against the major culprits. Here is totally opposite. It's to the contrary. Willis is not only abandoning the RICO charge, which is what she did. So Fannie abandoned the RICO charge on Sidney, Sidney's like one of the most hated characters ever in Georgia amongst this group of people, right? she's not even getting the felony guilty pleas of any kind. So they didn't try to negotiate felony pleas with her at all. These are all misdemeanors. If these sentences were serious prosecutions, not only would we would not be seeing probation sentences. If Willis truly believed in her RICO charge, the flaws of which she came up very serious. Remember her press conference? This is the most serious crime that's ever happened in the history of Georgia. She'd induce her cooperators to plead guilty to the RICO charge and explain in the plea agreement that what they did, particularly in conjunction with Donald Trump, that makes them guilty. And Willis isn't doing that here. So a lot of people are saying, this is not having to do with anything with the presidential elector situation. She wasn't involved with that. The other person that pleaded had a plea agreement is a bail bondsman or something. So they had that situation. They're trying to save their careers, which is what the assumption is here with Sidney Powell. And it's really more damning to Fani Willis here because they're abandoning the RICO case already with Sidney Powell, which is basically exiting Sidney Powell from the prosecutorial pathway forward here. So
it's weird. I mean, so obviously it's probably some blowback, right? Do you think I'm right in that assertion that there's some blowback about this, that Willis overplayed her hand, and you have the other aspect is that the grassroots are upset that it came down to this. That's what I'm trying to wrap my head around this. I'm not a lawyer. My other thing is now we have two lawyers going at each other. I always think it's funny. Another lawyer is going after another lawyer, and they're both going to try to outsmart one another. I think that's kind of funny.
Well, Sidney Powell too is kind of one of those people where I feel like she's been indignant throughout this whole thing. She's
actually, since November of after January of, we won't say that date, but she's kind of been nowhere. We haven't seen her very much. I think probably being under a lot of scrutiny since then, and then now we have this.
I just don't think that I just don't think that she's the kind of person that would. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong here, but I don't think she's the kind of person that's going to try to throw the state party under the bus. She's not trying to throw Donald Trump under the bus. I think this is just dude, this whole thing is, crap against me, and she's exiting from this, and this is really a big L for Fani Willis. So I hope that's the case. I hope that's right. I hope that's the way that some really smart people I trust are reading it, which is positive. Obviously the media is going to spin it any way that they want. They've been super nasty to Sidney Powell throughout this whole process, and anyone that's been critical at all of, the 2020 election in any kind of way. But this is a situation where, the left is really playing with fire, whether it's Georgia or it's here in Arizona or it's Wisconsin or Michigan, because, there is no perfect election. Right? There is no perfect election. And so people are becoming increasingly more aware of things going on. And here in Arizona, we just saw, Jack Posobiec was talking about all this week, the kid that did the meme and is getting thrown in prison by, a DC court.
A meme,
over posting a meme, right?
Yeah.
About election interference. Well, look at Arizona. What happened in 2022?
Right. Day of debacle.
Talk about disenfranchisement of thousands.
Yeah.
Literally, there's hundreds and thousands of people who have said or signed documents saying, my whole voting experience got screwed up, or I didn't vote, or I couldn't vote, or I wasn't chased. There's 9,000 plus votes uncounted in Maricopa County.
Mm-hmm.
So. So this is a real big deal that we've got to stay on top of. Looking in Georgia right now, you cannot take your eyes off Georgia with this whole process. I still think that they're doing everything they possibly can do to try to eliminate people
100%.
Out of the way who are not going to help get Trump removed off the ballot. I think they still are trying to pull 14th Amendment stuff, trying to get Trump removed off the ballot, because all they got to do, folks, is get Trump removed off the ballot in Arizona, Wisconsin, or Georgia, and it makes it very hard
mathematically
for Trump to win.
Absolutely. We'll keep an eye out on Georgia all the time. All the time we keep talking about Georgia, and it's interesting because the state of Georgia right now, Morning Consultant Bloomberg just came out with a poll, Trump leading Biden in 5 of 7 swing states. Georgia is one of them. Trump 48%, Biden 43%.
Can we throw this graphic
up? That's a 5-point difference in the swing state of Georgia. If we can throw that graphic up from Interactive Polls, it was a screenshot on Twitter. Arizona, 47% for Donald Trump. Biden, 43%. Those 2 states right there, wow. That's crazy. And then, who else we got up there? Michigan, 44. Almost a tie game in Michigan. Nevada, 46, Biden, Trump 43, 3 points. North Carolina, Trump 47, Biden 43. And then Pennsylvania, Biden 45, Trump 46. Wow. That's a big swing. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm so leery of polls regardless, like all the time now. I understand like Katie Hobbs was like the worst candidate we've ever had, probably run for governor in the history of Arizona. And Carrie Lake was up her like double digits at one point. I think I saw one poll that was like Carrie Lake was up 12 points over Katie Hobbs. And we obviously had the day of debacle in Maricopa County, and that really screwed up what happens here. And I have the same issues with these polls sometimes. I'll just give you guys my honest take. We can do these polls, but if we don't get those early ballots in and bank them like the left does in these states, then these polls really don't matter, and that's Georgia and Arizona. The month long of early voting there. I mean, yeah, we're up 5 in Georgia. Trump is. We're up 4 in Arizona. That's great, but I don't trust Maricopa County to run day of elections very well. I don't trust them to do signature verification very well, and these polls are great. And Bloomberg and Morning Consultant are respected polling when they've done them before, but it's and then the other one is Wisconsin, Trump 46, Biden 44. That's a 2-point difference there. That's not good though. That's scary stuff. Those between 5, 4, and 2, they can swing either way, and we still we have a long way to go. And I understand that because of the political persecution against Donald Trump and conservatives in general, and how awful the left has gone further and further left, and their policies are awful, and inflation is through the roof, and crime is skyrocketing. You would think all signs point towards the re-election of Donald Trump and another Republican wave, but it didn't happen. It was like that little red ripple, and we've got to be absolutely certain that we continue to ballot chase and prepare for ballot chasing, because these states within the 5-point margins, I mean, you can make that up in a year. We're a year out. Like a year from now, Tyler, it'll be early ballot time in Arizona.
Yeah, and this is like, again, going back, looking at this, these are all good signs, but we can't take it for any kind of, we cannot just rely on polling. So we're looking at this at the Morning Consult Bloomberg poll. Again, this is, I would argue, a center-left polling group here. So so you're in a situation where it's Wisconsin, we're up 2, Arizona, we're up 4, Georgia, we're up 5. And I believe this is I believe they're polling on the independent being in the race too here. Maybe not. These may not be taking.
Well, we can do this too. It's like, so the Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll, I'll read here for you guys, surveyed 5,023 registered voters in 7 swing states. 804 registered voters in Arizona, 801 in Georgia, 706 in Michigan, 503 in Nevada, 702 in North Carolina. Go on. The surveys were conducted from online October 5th to October 10th, and the aggregated data across the 7 swing states were weighted to approximate a target sample of swing state registered voters based on gender, age, race, ethnicity, marital status, home ownership, 2020 presidential vote, and state. State-level data were weighted to approximate a target sample of registered voters in the respective state based on gender, age, race, ethnicity, marital status, and obviously home ownership. So, and this is my critique of polling companies, especially when they come to they try to do them in Arizona. How many of those voters were conducted in Maricopa County? That's 60% of the electorate. And so, like, if they've only got like, if they only do like 30, yeah, I'm like, so that's why I'm always concerned with Arizona polling, because I was like, okay, if you didn't do the vast majority of your voters from Maricopa County, I'm like, then this is not accurate.
Your point's right that like a lot of like polls don't really matter. Like these things can get screwed up, whatever. At the end of the day, what comes down to is how much money is going to be spent by each side in each of these states. And here's what we know: the Democrats are probably not going to spend big in North Carolina. They're probably going to spend to defend Nevada because they have to. They need that state, as part of their blue goal. But Nevada's pretty much pointless either way it goes. They're going to spend and put lots of money specifically into Michigan to defend, and then it's this situation where it's Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and so. So the question is like, where are they spending the most amount of money to make sure that they win these states? Well, guys, it's ballot chasing.
Yeah.
So again, we're gonna sing this song to our faces blue
every week.
and I'll tell you, this week has been like so for a lot of different reasons, it seemingly demoralizing. But we're not gonna stop. We're not gonna allow ourselves to get demoralized. But there's guys that are out there that have been at this game for a long time that literally don't understand any of this stuff. They haven't spent any time looking at each of these states. They don't even know anything about some of these states. They might know a thing or two about one or two of these states. But what they do not understand is what we're up against. And what we're up against in these states is, why does this polling, this +4 in Arizona, not matter? Why does a +2 not matter in Wisconsin? Why does a +5 not matter in Georgia? Because we had similar to these numbers, remember, in 2020,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And COVID,
Trump was hanging around 5 in Arizona. I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, why does none of this matter? Because they're chasing ballots.
That's right.
So if they're going to put $100 million into our state, again, let's just do the quick math. And we're going to run people through this numerous times. Let's do the quick math. Austin, if you have 1,000 people, full-time people on the ground chasing ballots here, what does that break down to? It's quick math. I'm just going to round to 30 days.
Voters.
There's actually 28 days for early balloting in Arizona.
Right.
But let's just call it 30 days. So if you have 1,000 full-time people for 30 days, so what's 1,000 times 30?
30,000.
30,000. If each of those bodies, so 1,000 people, full-time people, are chasing 10 ballots per day, which isn't that many.
Right.
We're talking about one street, folks.
So
one
let's say
street.
30,000
times 10 votes per day.
300.
That's 300,000 votes. So everyone looks at us and I just explained that to them. And I say, okay, I know you have a lot of concerns about election manipulation. I know we do. There's a lot of things that they're doing. They're shutting down polls, how they're counting. They're taking things to run back. They're doing all these different things. Signature verification, ballot curing, Yokava votes. All those things are true, may be true, are partially true. All of those things have some truth to them, right? But you cannot ignore still the boots on the ground, right, getting out the vote, and that they're funding these things. If they could just win elections without spending $50 to $100 million in each of these states, don't you think they would do it?
Mm-hmm.
They would. But they need those 300,000 extra votes,
right,
to start. That's their starting line. And then they have to screw us, right? So there's a lot of good groups out there that are fighting the good fight to stop them from screwing us. That's great. What our focus is, if we just do our job and help get out even a portion of those votes the same way that they're doing it, we're talking about bringing hundreds of thousands of votes to the table that they weren't expecting. And if you watch the movie Moneyball, when you throw in things that you're not expecting, right, it changes all the equation. And the more last minute you do it, the more it changes things for them. It makes them go crazy.
Yeah, and we talk about this all the time. So Arizona was drastically underfunded, and it has continued to be drastically underfunded from a national Republican apparatus. But what has continued to go up in Arizona is obviously the left spending here, but on the right, our political activity has gone up. We see it in the grassroots every single day in the movement in Arizona, and they're making a difference in these close elections.
Yeah,
I cannot imagine if we channel all that energy and that frustration into ballot chasing, into getting those low propensity Republican or independent voters get their ballots in the mailbox. And earlier, I mean, right now we're going through small municipal elections for like bond overrides and stuff. And you guys need to go to Tyler's Twitter and see the mass mailing of ballots, because it's in state statute in Arizona. Like, municipalities hold vote by mail only elections. And you want to talk about that a little bit, Tyler, because this is like a run up to so many of these swing states, just mainly Arizona. We'll talk about Arizona with this, about Maricopa County and these mail ballots with these municipal elections leading up to a presidential year.
We should share my my tweet that went viral.
Sadie, can we find Tyler's tweet from this week?
We should throw this thing up here. I'll explain kind of what happened. So I go to my mailbox this week, and I've come back with my mail. I'm sorting through all my junk mail and all this stuff, my SRP bill, and I look and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 4 ballots here. I've got 4 ballots. There it is. For those that are watching, we got 4 ballots. And we only have 2 registered voters in my house. So
you and
me
your
and
wife.
my wife. Yeah. So the rest are kids. So I started looking at this. I'm like, oh my gosh, these people, I know the history of this house. These people haven't lived in this house for over 10 years.
That's insane.
Or close to 10 years. They haven't been there. So why did they show up at our box, though? I didn't get their ballots the last number of elections. How would I have, I didn't know that they were registered in my house. I had no idea that they were still registered to my house. And there's some other interesting facts with that I won't get into here, but you know why they were showing up to my house this time? Because this election's an all-mail special election. So here are the tricks that the left is pulling. This is the reason why they want to register every single person to vote. So they want to register every man, woman, and near child, right, and dead person to vote. Every dog, every squirrel, every fake, every
anybody with a pulse,
anyone at all. As soon as you walk into the state, because then those are just flooded ballots everywhere, right? Because then they show up at mailboxes, and even people that have no interest in voting, they show up. But here's the kicker: in Arizona, you can't just do that. We don't just do automatic like California and Oregon and other places that automatically. But they wrote in this very special law where it's like, oh, but if it's like an emergency special election, then it can be all mail so that we can like make sure people know to vote. They did this a long time ago. Well, this provision was meant as an emergency. So now how are they exploiting it? All across the state of Arizona, they've got all these special election bond increases that are raising taxes, that are increasing spending by hundreds of millions of dollars in some of these school districts. And now you have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Now you have all these special elections that they're taking advantage of voters not paying attention, getting all the teachers, the teacher adjacent, kind of abusing them and telling them, you got to get out the vote so we can continue to pay you and give you increases and all of that. When the reality is like they're using it for lots of different things. They still have COVID money sitting in the bank. That's beside the point. My point is they're abusing the process to take advantage of these mail ballots. So my question immediately to people is like, if you think they're going to abuse the process for a special election for school districts and increasing your taxes locally and doing all of that, you don't think that they'll do that for a presidential election?
Absolutely.
And we know they will.
Maricopa County is the worst at it too. That's the problem.
Yeah, Maricopa County is literally run by people who, are not public servants. They're not trying to do the right thing for everyone. They're not engaging with the two major political parties. They're just doing what they think is smart as technocrats. But here's what...
Before we move on, something I remembered yesterday, somebody else brought it. Actually, it was one of the other state reps. The entire Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, all the incumbents, I forget, none of them had an election in 2020. They all just waltzed in there.
Yeah.
There was no accountability for these guys, like to campaign on anything, to change anything at the Board of Supervisors. And they all are... Now, all of them are back up for re-election. 2 of them have, or one of them for sure has a tough re-election, Thomas Galvin versus Michelle Udentarita. But go on. I just remembered that now we've got to flood the zone of these ballots in Maricopa County for these special elections, and those Board of Supervisors didn't have an election in 2020. I forgot about that.
Well, you've got this situation now where, people... The system is becoming so convoluted that people are losing faith in the system. at every turn here because it's like ranked choice voting is so difficult to understand. They got jungle primaries in California. You move somewhere else, they got something else. You got to move somewhere else, they got something else. And now people are just like, oh, yeah, I guess you just trust the process. I'm so detached from it. There's nothing I can do. Just let it happen. And you can't trust any of these people. And go back to when Adrian Fontes, who's now our Secretary of State in Arizona, it's such a huge mistake on Arizona's behalf, but he was the loser that got kicked out of being Maricopa County supervisor, or Maricopa County recorder. I'm sorry. He was trying to automatically send everyone a ballot.
Yes.
So when he was, and everybody cried foul, including Stephen Richer, who ran, right, against him. And this is how big of a liar Stephen is.
He wanted to make the recorder's office boring again, and he's made it the worst place
He's just continued every policy that Adrian Fontes.
He's liberal. He's not. He's
wanted to institute. He's just such a dishonest human being. I don't have a lot of respect for people who go in, tell everybody all these LD meetings and county meetings and everything else that they're going to be ultra conservative, and then they go in and they do this to people. It's
did absolutely nothing, and he has such a disdain for conservatives.
But here's the deal: so Adrian Fontes wanted to ship everyone a mail ballot, forced. So, and this came up during COVID, right? And so, I mean, guys, this is part of the reason why I don't blame people for having the conspiracy theory that the entire COVID play, and leaning into it during an election was to help force this increased mail ballot. And you see, again, I have the example that's at my house where I have 2 more ballots that show up. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I took a little poll with people, just like regular, normal people. And I was like, hey, have you ever known somebody to just fill out a ballot on behalf of someone else, like a husband or their wife or somebody else, a kid that shows up at their ballot? This is totally confidential. Have you ever seen somebody do that? And over half of the people that responded said yes. Did they know? So the system doesn't catch all these people. It doesn't send it back. And if it does kick it back, it's kicking back at higher numbers. And the system that they have for curing these ballots is much better for Democrats. But there's one funny part about this, Austin. Rusty Bowers, who's the Speaker of the House.
I was just about to bring this up, so go ahead.
So last election, you know about this?
No, I was going to say, I serve on the elections committee, and I have learned so much of the entire process from, by the time somebody is registered to vote, how a ballot is printed and made, sent in the mailbox, all of the chain of custody issues and stuff like that. Signature verification, I could go on for hours about how signature verification is so broken in Arizona. But this all was fixable a long time ago under the trifecta of Ducey, Karen Fann, and Rusty Bowers. And give credit where credit's due. I know Karen Fann was on board with that kind of stuff. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, Rusty Bowers, turns out, had multiple children registered to his home that haven't lived at his house for many, many years. In fact, 2 of his kids, his kid and their spouse, lived in Hawaii, but were still registered to his home.
Wow.
And had been regularly voting. But they lived in Hawaii for many years. So, I mean, you have this situation where it's like these situations have happened even with prominent people. Nobody's looked at it. Over half the people that, in just circles I've known have said, yeah, I've known somebody that turned in a ballot on behalf of somebody else. They signed it. They did it, filled it out for them. They were out of town or, whatever. They didn't think it was a big deal. That's the lackadaisical way that ballots. Let me ask you a question, Austin. For somebody, and that's amongst some people who I know value their ballot a lot.
Right.
How do you think people feel that have very low value of a ballot?
Just a piece of paper.
They don't care.
Yeah, just a piece of paper.
Do you think they really bother? Do you think they lose a wink of sleep at night?
Not a chance.
Having turned in a ballot or just messing around, turning in a ballot on behalf of somebody else?
Not really.
Do you think they're ever going to admit that felonious?
They're a low propensity
crime?
voter for a reason. They're just not interested in it. It has no value to them.
So if somebody comes and knocks on your door then and is like, hey, you want to help me out? I won't leave you alone, or pressures you at the door, basically peer pressures you at the door to vote, and you don't really care that much about it, do you think you're probably going to vote?
Yeah. Not as much. But you keep annoying me. Yeah, I'm going to fill it out.
Yeah, it's like they don't care. They have a low value on their ballot. So anything that's going to be a little bit annoying or any kind of like pressure, they're just going to do it real quick and they're going to get you out of their face and then you're done because they don't care, right? It's not like they're protected. They're not like, oh my gosh, I'm hanging on to this until election day and I'm making a final decision. Most of these people just don't care.
Yeah.
It's like, so if you go and knock on their door and you're like, hey, so this is what we're up against. We're up against, flooding the system with ballots. We know this. We're up against a system that's rigged for counting and how things are counted. People say rigged all the time. What we mean by that is, an easy to manipulate system if you know what you're doing with it for the left. The left has all these processes in place to manipulate the system. We don't. The right has never set these things up. Everything from chasing ballots to counting ballots to curing ballots. There's a whole process that listeners to our show here with updates and with everything on Swing State Update are going to be becoming far more involved in this process. We're going to educate you. We're going to bring in experts that are going to show you how to build this. We're going to give you the tools. We're going to involve you with the processes, I should say. We want you involved. And so, but yeah, the left is so much better set up for all this.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's where we are at.
Well, let's talk topic number 3, Tyler. You know more about this than from what I do. Jack McCain. What's going on with Mr. Jack McCain?
So we got some news for everybody here. So I don't know. Should we throw up some of these pictures of Jack McCain just as a reminder who Jack McCain is? Apparently really good buddies with Mark Kelly. I didn't realize this before looking into him. Seems to spend an inordinate amount of time with Mark Kelly, which is really interesting because Jeff Flake's son, Jack McCain has something in common with Jeff Flake's son, who went to work for Mark Kelly actually in Washington, D.C.
That's true.
We found that out when we found out that he was a paid employee on Capitol Hill for Mark Kelly. You have him. He's I think he's about my age. So he's in his 30s, and he is apparently very interested in running for Senate to uphold his dad's name in Arizona. And so this has been floated now many times. This is like becoming very serious talk in Arizona. But now there's a big problem for Jack McCain to run, and her name's Kyrsten Sinema. So the entire Chamber of Commerce apparatus in Arizona, which is like, and I'll explain this, because this is not just for Arizona. This is very much the same in most states. You've got your state Chamber of Commerce, which is probably pretty moderate liberal, and then you've got your local municipalities, your big city Chamber of Commerce. Like in Arizona, we have the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, which is basically the Chamber of Commerce that was run and controlled by McCain. Now, all these guys have been super cozy and super friendly with the Koch network for how many years, who basically run the thing. And then they have been super cozy and friendly with Kyrsten Sinema, who has, interestingly enough, hired a lot of Koch and former Koch people. So anytime that you see these Koch people like that working for anyone, they're probably not on the right side of things. But now, this idea of Kari Lake running, now everybody's freaking out because they're like, oh my gosh, what if Kari Lake becomes our senator? Because Kyrsten Sinema and Ruben Gallego split the vote, and Kari basically just wins and glides in because they think in their mind they can beat the crap out of Kari if it's a one-on-one.
Yeah.
But this now presents this unique opportunity because the chamber and the moderates and the moderate Democrats are all supporting Kyrsten.
Yeah.
So there's this uniparty that's supporting Kyrsten Sinema, which is so weird. You have the leftists supporting Ruben Gallego, and you have the conservatives
who are pissed at Sinema.
Conservatives supporting either Kari or Mark Lamb. And Kari and Mark are going to duke it out, and I fully believe they're gonna figure it out and be friendly and be nice to each other. That's my hope. So so you have this situation now where Jack McCain is like, well, I can run, as a moderate Republican, but if he runs as a Republican, then it's
him versus Kerry.
Yeah,
and Mark Lamb, a three-way race.
There's no way if they think he can win or beat Mark or Kerry, then it's him versus Kirsten. They're gonna split each other's votes, and then like give it to Rubin.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they're telling Jack like, no, now's not your time. Maybe next time. And as you can imagine, that conversation does not go over well with the McCain family.
This is my seat. Right. Yeah. I mean, look, Kerry's been in for about almost 2 weeks now. Mark Lamb has been in for a while. We're starting a new fundraising quarter. This will be very important. This next quarter, people raising money will really set the bar of like, okay, this is the serious person. This is not. John Barrasso, chairman of the Senate Republican Conference, that's a guy that's in leadership, raises a bunch of money for Republicans to win, just came out and endorsed Kerry Lake. And he's establishment. He's not conservative. John Barrasso is not conservative. Like, he's not a MAGA Senate guy. He's not conservative. He's part of the establishment. They've already come out and endorsed Kerry Lake. So that may be another sign to Jack McCain, be like, hey, you're not the guy right now. Kerry's way too popular. She's already racking up things that are actually important. I understand he's establishment, but it's just showing that Jack McCain maybe not be the guy. If the DC swamp is already going to be like, yeah, we're not going to fight Kerry, because we talk about this, right? The establishment knows right now maybe that Kerry is going to win, and so they're just going to try to play nice a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is for the grassroots to be aware of, which is that they're trying to do this. So if for some reason I think Kirsten Sinema gets out of the race because she feels like she doesn't have a path forward, do not be surprised if they try to push forward a Jack McCain Senate run here. And that would be very interesting. That would be a very interesting situation. I think he'd get beat pretty bad.
I don't think he can win a primary.
I just think the party itself has just moved on from the establishment. I think that's part of the reason why Mitt Romney's stepping down. I think even in a state like Utah, where Romney had pretty popular numbers, is like he knows the party is largely made up. I think it's 80% made up of conservatives now. It's not even competitive anymore with the more moderate wing.
I mean, they should start look at the all of these people that are coming out and running for these certain races that are trying to primary people in Congress, in the House. I'm like, can you imagine it for the Senate? It's like it's a very tight rope not a tight rope to walk, but like there's certain things that the grassroots won't put up with anymore. It's like zero tolerance policy.
Well, this is even more important. A lot of states and state parties are taking control of endorsements. So it's real, this is happening in Nevada right now. So this is kind of, again, background. Nevada actually has a caucus system for nominating candidates. So they can make up their own. Utah used to have a system that's similar to this. Other states have very similar situations where they can basically kick you off the ballot if you're not endorsed by the party. Mm-hmm. And that's the right of a private party, right? That's the total right of a private party. They can set whatever expectations they want, and they can kick you off. And so, if you have these situations, how Arizona's been a pretty loose state. It's been, if you're a Republican, you can run for whatever you want. But, we're getting to a point now where people are just like sick and tired of just letting anybody like claim that they're a Republican and run. And I don't blame people for that. And I actually had a conversation with a donor kind of in the background, a big donor, somebody that's a large contributor. And again, it always cracks me up when people are like, Turning Point's like the last group that just does whatever donors want. We try to create things at Turning Point and then go to the donors and say, hey, you need to fund this and support this because this is going to be good for the movement, good for the country. But this donor in particular is kind of frustrating because it's like, hey, don't we want Republicans? This was this question, and it's a good question. Don't we want Republicans that have some history in working with Democrats and going across the aisle? And I said, yeah, of course you want people, but you want people going across the aisle and bringing Democrats to us.
Right.
Yeah, getting them to do things that we like border security and things like that, right? But if you're going across the aisle and giving up our values that are clearly stated in like the party platform, that's when people get upset, right? Like people will celebrate a person all day long that gets Democrats to do conservative stuff.
What's weird is like, well, I think about it too in the legislature and watch members of Congress and most Republicans, it's like we don't touch the Second Amendment stuff. Like, it's a no compromise issue. Why isn't that with all a bunch of other stuff? It's like, that's the one we won't compromise. Like, there's plenty of other ones, guys, that it's like no compromise issue. We can't do that.
You can't compromise. And so it's really hard for people to understand that, right? Which is like, hey, this is not a situation where, people are going to be okay with it. And so this person was, this donor, again, great dude. I enjoyed talking to him, and I think he's a real one. But I was like, hey, if that person, if anybody wants to run for office, you got to like focus on the base. You got to listen to the base first, and then, communicate to them, hey, this is my strategy for bringing people to us, right? And again, I think this is what Carrie tries to do. I talked to her Carrie this week, and we had a long conversation. She's like, yeah, I talk to Democrats, but I try to get Democrats to come to us, right? And again, that's that is the way that we should be looking at this. That is compromising your values is never going to be looked fondly upon, and it's going to probably limit your ability to run in the future.
100%. Speaking of running, let's just cover it just a little bit quickly. Debbie Lesko is retiring. AZCD8 out there in the West Valley, longtime lawmaker Debbie Lesko says she's done. She's not running for re-election in 2024. Tyler, what are your thoughts about that?
Well,
you're the RNC National Committee man.
Tell us what the breakdown is then. So who's running?
Well, Debbie is out, and the only person on the Republican side that is declared, and for those of you
Where is this? Where's CD8
For those of you that are not from Arizona, CD8 in Arizona is the West Valley out by me.
So it's where the Cardinals play.
Yeah, right out there by where the Cardinals play. That's all Sun City West, so that large retirement community out there. 52% pretty much of that congressional district is all Sun City. So it's a Republican district. It's like R+10, so it's a Republican favored district. Debbie Lesko is retiring. Thank you for your service, Debbie, to Arizona and the West Valley. But Abe Hamadeh, our friend Abe Hamadeh, has announced that he is going to run for that district. I was asked if I was going to run, Tyler. I said no. I don't live in that district. I don't want to go to Congress. I think the fight is here in Arizona. I can be helpful there. Speaker Ben Toma of the Arizona House of Representatives has expressed interest in the race. He just came out a few days ago. Those are the only two serious ones that we've heard of right now. Jeff DeWitt, state party chairman, he declined. I declined. My seatmate in the House, Steve Montenegro, has declined. They've talked about Jan Brewer. They've talked about Phil Lovis maybe running, somebody consider. State Senator Anthony Kern as well as somebody consider. So those are the names that were floated. What do you think, Tyler? Like, where's your mind at right now in this? It's a Republican district, so it's primary winner take all.
It's like a +10 to +15.
So it's going to be
upon the year. So
primary winner take all.
It's a double-digit plus Republican district. Just for again those that are listening. Debbie had a pretty good vote record up until this last year. This last year, I think she
was in the Freedom Caucus, and she had pretty good voting record.
She was in the Freedom Caucus, and this last year she's kind of dropped off and hasn't been as super engaged with the Freedom Caucus. And again, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight here. My understanding was, people are paying more attention to the stuff than they ever have before. And so she just recently was showing up at Tea Party meetings and some group meetings and some places that she really trusts, and they were very angry with her because of her vote in the speaker's race, because of her vote. I think
the vaccine stuff was
the CR stuff. I don't even know all the things that the complaints were about. I do know that they were upset with her, and so she was just like, man, and I'll give her some credit here. She's
cognitive, that's smart thinking.
Yeah, she's a person where she's like, I'm not gonna just go and try to shove it in the face of my constituents. If they're angry with me, then I'll be done. I don't have to do this. I've got a life to live and a family to love, and I appreciate that. But she's been pretty good. So, anyways, this race now you've got what looks like is going to be.
Oh, and Blake. Sorry, I forgot about that too.
The fight here, you've got Abe Hamadeh, who jumped in immediately. Apparently, Debbie called two people that we know of. One, her first call allegedly was to Kimberly Yee, who's the state treasurer, and is very proud of the fact that she was the top vote getter out of the statewides or whatever for Republicans. But we can get into a different day of the reasons why that exists. Two is Ben Toma, so allegedly she called. And then you have some other people that are thinking about running. So you have Anthony Kern, who is a state senator there. It's very popular. He's on the Freedom Caucus, right? I think you brought that up. You have Jeff DeWitt, who's out there. He's like beloved. Like if Jeff ran, he would be
I think a clean house.
he'd be formidable. And Kimberly Yee obviously is very popular there. She's West Valley. But then you also have Blake Masters, who is really who spent a lot of time in the West Valley as of late, and is spending a ton of time out there. And there's a lot of speculation because he's spending a lot of time around the border of 8 and 9 if you'd run for Congress at some point. So I know he's thinking about it. Next week, I think we're going to have, as a little teaser, I think we're going to have Abe Hamadeh come in here and join us, and we'll talk with him a little bit about the race, but we'll talk about the future of America First in Congress and what that looks like. But I think this is going to come down to basically two sides. You're going to have someone that gets endorsed by Trump, possibly, and then you're going to have everybody else. Yeah. And so the more that everybody else is split, then it's going to be really difficult for someone else to win. I just think that because it's such a Republican district.
No, absolutely. And I've believed this, and I will say it till I'm blue in the face. If you're conservative and there's other conservatives that are in a primary and somebody gets endorsed by Trump and it's not you, maybe remove yourself from that primary. Only because Donald Trump's endorsement is so powerful. And you brought this up about, the Kerry getting endorsed last cycle by President Trump and Matt Salmon kind of being upset about it. You don't want to be that guy that's like on the wrong side of President Trump, even though you might be a great conservative, but you're on the opposite side of what the vast majority of the voting Republican populace is. And a lot of people think that you're anti-Trump when you're not the anti-Trump, when you're not endorsed by President Trump. That's not always true. We get that. That's not always true. Mark Lamb is not endorsed by President Trump right now, but I don't believe that he is anti-Trump at all. But when you have probably maybe 8 people jumping into this Republican primary. Potentially, there could be up to 8 people. A lot of it.
There's going to be that many people.
Yeah, I mean, there could be at least 8 people in there. I'm at 4 or 5 of them are probably more conservative, and you'll probably have 3 people who are,
iffy.
They're iffy. Yeah, they're Republican. They'll vote the party platform, but they're not going to take the line in the sand kind of approach for things. And we'll see. This is the first open congressional district seat for a Republican district since 2016 when Matt Salmon retired, and it was Christine Jones versus Andy Biggs. So we had an East Valley one several years ago. Now we have a West Valley one. I take that back. There was in 2018 when Trent Franks resigned, and that there was that seat. But this is a little bit different now because it's an incumbent after the country has changed so much in the last few years. And so it'll be interesting to see between you'll have an Abe Hamadeh, potentially Ben Toma, a Blake Masters, and maybe one other candidate. I don't know. I think it'll probably be a 3-person race, and we'll go from there. I'm in the West Valley, so I'm going to see this all the time. This is going to probably be my life for the next, several months leading up to the Republican primary in August of 2024. So that'll be definitely a topic here at Swing State Update as we go forward, because this is the first Republican primary in a very long time in Arizona. So, and action will be all around. We'll be all around this stuff. So,
well, the West Valley, all of Arizona is going to be really important to us for ballot chasing. So, I know Austin and I are both very committed to the ballot chasing program that we're going to be that we've already launched. It's called Chase the Vote, and you can go visit this at tpaction.com/chase to get more involved. You can also go to tpaction.com/get involved to follow more information. Make a plan to vote. Help people get registered to vote. We have a voter registration portal that's right on our website. So if you ever need to register people to vote, download our application. You can click right on register to vote under our activism tools that are in there. You can go knock doors right away. You can start contacting people. We actually, as of tomorrow, we have some new features rolling out in the application, which includes a texting platform, so you can directly text people. So if you download our application, you can go to our website right now and download it, tpaction.com. At the top, it says download our app, or you can find on Apple, in the App Store, the Google Play Store. Let's look it up. But you can start calling, texting, door knocking, postcard writing. And then in addition to that, you can start uploading your own contacts into the database. And so you can start contacting people that matching them to the voter data, and then immediately start contacting your own friends and family who are conservative, and start just letting them know that you're there and as a support system to help them vote and make a plan to vote.
That's right.
So it's pretty exciting, Austin.
Yeah, and we talk about it all the time, closing up here. Lead your neighborhood, you lead the country. This is a great app, Turning Point Action app, to effectively be the most effective grassroots person in your neighborhood of the 15 closest Republican voters around you. Super important. Go to tpaction.com/chase the vote. Get signed up there. We're building that army right now. tpaction.com/precinct. We need you to be a precinct committeeman. You're not actually in the Republican Party unless you're a precinct committeeman. Go to tpaction.com/coalitions. You're a mom, you're an educator, you're a farmer, you're a rancher, you're African American, you're Latino, and you're a conservative, and you want to help us win in 2024. Go to tpaction.com/coalitions. Tyler, any final thoughts?
You know, Austin, we're in the tough part of this election cycle where it's going to be a lot of fighting.
A year from now, we'll be chasing ballots.
A lot of fighting is going on right now. People deciding they're going to run. There's primary races. We have the presidential race that, there's a lot of candidates that will be licking their wounds afterwards. We got to come together and focus on the elements that are going to be important for the conservative movement to win, regardless of who the candidates are going to be. And so that's why getting involved with us, knowing what's going on with us, we can help. We want you involved, regardless of who the candidates are going to be. Helping the conservative movement win. That's what we got to do.
It's all about. It's not about me. It's about the country. Thank you guys for tuning in this week. See you next time.